So today we're going to be thinking about color management, and get your notebooks out, take notes today. Our definition of color management: the management of color from capture to output. And so on the bullets below: camera, computer, the printer, and or sending it out to a lab. But the idea is that you align the color profiles to match each of those devices, the computer and the printer in particular. And we start by setting the color space on our camera. sRGB is a recommended, or Adobe 1998, 1998 are the two recommendations. And we've spoken a little bit about color space. You remember that horseshoe diagram with all the multiple colors in it. The horseshoe itself represents the visible spectrum, and the actual color space that we're using to capture an image is smaller than that. And things that we're going to be thinking about are monitor calibration. There's a link in the email today to a video that talks about monitor calibration. And there's a lot said in the industry about needing to get your monitor calibrated correctly. But unfortunately, it's not a pure science. And in the real world, many things impact the way we perceive color in photography. And monitor calibration is important. It's one of those. But the color of light hitting the screen when we're looking at the images, the ambient light in the room, so is it fluorescent light, the color of the wall, all of that is going to impact our perception of color as we look at it. So hopefully today we're going to be digging in, starting to look at color. There's in your Photography London Stone and Upton book, page 180, you'll be able to see that there's some information there that will help you. In particular, the box at the top here, thinking about color balance, and that's the tool that we're going to be using for the exercise that we're going to talk about today. And there'll be some other pointers in there. It is confusing, but my goal today is that you start to look at color with a little bit more finesse and making adjustments on images. We've got a PowerPoint that we're going to go through, a color adjustment exercise that I'm going to talk you through, and take notes as we go along. So color management, the International Color Consortium, or ICC Profile, that's the organization that really standardize color amongst all devices. Color.org if you want to look online, and you get a little bit more information about the International Color Consortium. This little booklet from Canon was a pretty good kind of guide that just takes us through some of the basics. And well, workflow, that's a term that we've used a lot. It's a generic term. It's not a very specific term, but how we manage our images is something that we're going to develop in a very personal way as we go forward, although we were very specific right at the beginning of the program about the way that we wanted you to manage your files. Back in the days of film, you'd have your film, you develop it, look at it on a light box, decide which image you wanted to print, put it in the printer, or excuse me, an enlarger, and make adjustments to color in the enlarger to get a final print. But of course, we live in a digital age, so our digital camera and computer, we look at it on the screen, and then we've got to somehow adjust the image before printing it, and that's where things get a little bit tricky. Color space, we've spoken about. We've got the RGB, additive and subtractive color processes. So RGB is when we think of color as light being combined together. Right in the middle you can see it's white light when you combine in equal amounts the red, green and blue. And black, or a neutral gray, is what we end up with the CMY, cyan, magenta and yellow. The K stands for black, and of course when we have our printers we have 2, maybe 3 different types of black ink to create that density and depth and contrast that we need in our final images. I'm going to fly through this and then go through the exercise. Color management, just get that term in your head, the management of color from capture to output. And of course you can stop the video and read through these pages a little bit more if you choose. Getting the monitor calibrated correctly and getting everything in line is what color management is really all about. And you know, I was saying a moment ago that the color of the light in a room, the color of the light hitting a monitor, or the wall color in the room where you're making adjustments, all of that is going to change our perception of color. And these screens that you see around some of these monitors help block out ambient light coming and hitting a screen. There was one lab that we would use, and they said that their room for editing was in complete darkness, and they would not allow their technicians to start working on images until their eyes have adjusted for 30 minutes. And they'd calibrate all of their screens on a regular basis, on a daily basis. You know, I wish it was as simple as that, but it really is not. And perceiving color is a tricky business. And you know, let me see. There's a couple of things I want us to look at here. Bear with me as I try and find the various images that we're going to be looking at today. You know, perceiving color. These are quite dramatic changes, and most of the time when we're looking at our own images and trying to decide whether the color is correct or needs adjusting, gets kind of really tricky because it's fine-tuned adjustments that we're looking at. But as I scroll through these images, you can see that there are differences in the color. And the exercise that you're going to be working on today will be working on these individual files and correcting them for correct color. Let's go back to the image of the glove that I had up in just a moment ago. Let's get rid of that. And this wooden glove. You know, there are lots of different ways that we could do things in Photoshop. And for the exercise today, we're going to be using from the drop-down menus, it's just out of sight, image, adjustments, and then color balance here. And that will allow us to make adjustments to the color. We can see here that on the left, cyan, magenta, yellow, red, green, and blue on the right. And there's a balance between each of these two colors. We have these sliders on this tool that we can use to adjust color. Let's get it out of the way so we can see. But cyan and red are adjusted together. Magenta and green are adjusted together. Yellow and blue are adjusted together. You know, it can get very difficult to perceive what's the difference between something that looks red and something that looks magenta. And that ability to perceive the difference is a part of what this exercise today is all about. I want you just to start seeing the difference in color and working on that as best you can. There are automatic color settings available in Photoshop. We've got the auto color balance setting here. It adjusts the contrast as well as the color when you hit this. But on an image like the one that we're looking at, where there is just one single hue, if you will, or color palette, there's not enough range in there for the auto settings to be able to adjust correct color, and we end up with an image that's looking way too cyan and dramatically different. And so some images, the auto color may help you, but really and truly we need to be learning how to prepare our files and getting them right for adjusting and either printing ourselves or sending off to a lab. And it's worth noting with all of this that if you're sending your images off to a lab to get printed, you can pay just a minimum amount extra for them to do the color correction. And that would be my recommendation 90% of the time that we get them to do that. This is a set of images that we're going to be working on today. You've got them attached to your email. And you can see here that there are different images with different colors, two different images with different colors attached to them. The first image here, it's, let me see, now I'm looking at the wrong image. Correct color, it should say, yeah, color correct. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong title there. So the first image, correct color, that will be your baseline image where you need to get the color back to that. So regardless of whether your monitor is calibrated correctly or not, what you need to do is get the color adjusted on the images that you have in the set back to the same color as the one I'm calling correct color. And that's one method for actually trying to get your color as correct as possible. It's pretty crude, but it can be fairly effective as well. Ditto over here, the first image in the set is correct color. This image is the one that we need to get our images back to. Okay, so the images that you've got, I'm going to suggest that you upload them, save them to your computer in a folder that says originals, and you'll keep them separately. You can copy those and then put them into another folder. So we'll create a new folder here, and color corrected is what we can call those images. So I'm just going to edit and paste those images into the system. Okay, so here I'm giving you clues on these files. Number 2 is 2 red. Number 3 is 2 cyan. Number 4 is 2 green. So on each of those, on that slider, you only need to adjust that slider to get it correct. But on image number 6 and image number 12, unspecified color. I'm not telling you what color is incorrect, but I still need you to try and adjust those to get them as accurately in line with the images that you've got. I'm going to open these 2 images into Photoshop, and once they're open in Photoshop, let's get that out of the way, just so that it's not in the way. We can see that this image, number 2, is 2 red. This is our color correct image. So what I want to do is get this image so it looks exactly like the color correct image. And I'm going to use the color balance tool. There are lots of tools that are available to us. Your book will explain a little bit more about some of the options that are available to you. But for today, I want you to work with the color balance tool. This file is 2 red. We can see the red slider here. I can make it redder. Or if I slide it towards cyan, I can get it closer to looking like its correct color. First glance, this looks pretty good. That's minus 40 on that slider. So plus 40 cyan. Hit OK. But if I toggle backwards and forwards to the image that I'm calling color correct, you can see that actually the color is not accurate and correct. On this particular image, I'm going to tell you what the right setting is. So I'll just go on Edit, Undo, so we're back to the original file. Image, Adjustments, and Color Balance. And here I'm going to take it to minus 60. So this is a huge color adjustment. And then when I hit OK, if I toggle backwards and forwards between those 2 images, you can see that there's no difference at all. As a recommendation, having a test image where the density is correct for printing, so the lightness, brightness, and contrast is correct, and using that as a guide image for making adjustments to our other prints, and also having images that are correct for color as a guide on our own screen are a good way to start getting color closer to where it needs to be. Of course, using Camera Raw, shooting with a gray card, and using the eyedropper tool in Camera Raw to get our color right is a recommended method as well, but very often that's not where we're at. And so this exercise, well, it's a part 1 of part 2. Next week we're going to be thinking about doing our color wheel. We'll be using the color balance setting. Once you've got the file correct, exit out and save it, and then you move on to the next file and adjust that. That's the exercise for today. You need to deliver those images onto Blackboard. And yep, I think that's all we need to know right now.